Hello, this is Max Drake. I want to talk about Home Assistant, which actually integrates a lot of different manufacturers' device into one platform so that you can use a device from one manufacturer to trigger a device from another manufacturer. So I can actually suddenly saying a Tuya timer sets off my Sonoff hot water heater and turns it on and off or something like that. So I just want to go through and explore a couple of things about dashboards and ideas. So from what I've seen of other people's dashboards, because I'm an architect, I kind of quite like the visual, and I like clearly. You see, a lot of them just have these cards that I find quite irritating because you can put some information on the cards, but it's sort of hard work going through and looking at them. I prefer a visual thing. I've got a bulb on my thing. I can click on that and activate it, etc. So I've got my activation ones, I've got my sensor ones, and I've got my batteries. So the batteries I can generally ignore or just have an indicator for those. But these ones are sort of give me with dashboard information, which I think is what you want on your dashboard in a way. So I'll show you how I built this and what's in behind it and how you get it to display in this way. Because I think it's a handy thing to do, even if you just sketch out your house plan and things like that. It gives an idea of where all your devices are quite well. The second thing I want to talk about is I want to step through doing a Tuya app. So I want a bit of an explanation as to why I'm using a lot of the Tuya ones now. And then the third one that I want to do is I want to bring a new app in and show you, and I want to do a sort of a background on the way they do it, which is a bit painful in a way. And so that's why I want to focus on the Tuya one, and then why I use Tuya, and then the third one is I want to use it, do an automation and demonstrate it. So it could all be one thing, or it could be jointed into a few other ones. So first of all, the Tuya smart devices. With the smart devices, you can get an awful lot of different things that do stuff through here. So they're either Zigbee or stuff. So you can have switches, you can have stuff in your dashboard, you can have smart plugs. You can have switches, the smart scene switch ones. So these, you press on them once, it sets up one scene. You press on them twice, they do the other ones. The smart switches in the light sockets and stuff. You can actually think they got remote controls for doing some stuff. Again, these sensors for doing power meter ranges. You've got curtain motors and stuff like that. So there's a lot of things that they got. So they got lots of gadgets, but they're not only limited to just the basic home ones. They're also got things like, so this is one that we actually ended up using. So they got a garage door opener through there, and then they got a 4-gain relay that you can actually trigger other things and stuff. So this one here is actually measuring pH, EC, TDS and salt that you can actually have inside an aquarium or something like that, that was useful for what we were doing. So they've got commercial or semi-industrial items that you can do, and in some ways these are a hell of a lot more less expensive than other ones. The one that we ended up with, this up dosing and down dosing, a lot of the equivalent industrial ones that you get in New Zealand were about $1,000, and they would only either updose or down-dose, whereas ours actually can updose or down-dose. So ended up being a lot happier. It was more than the $70 that was the thing. But what I'm saying is it actually has a big scheme of things to do, and they're a lot cheaper. Like if I buy a bulb here, if I buy a Tapo bulb in New Zealand, it costs me something like $16, but I can actually buy one off Tapo for $5. So that's why I can buy one off AliExpress for $5. So although I've got to wait for 2 or 3 weeks for it to come from China, my investment and my attitude at this point in time is I'm just trying things out to see what happens, because each manufacturer gives you different information. On my Tapo bulb, it will tell you whether it's got a little overheating information that you can do, and it's also got how strong the Wi-Fi connection is. The Tapo ones that I've actually purchased don't, but that might just be the certain product that I bought from one company. So Tapo is a sort of a system. And so lots of different manufacturers. You see this one here is a Yuri, but it actually works. It works with Tapo. This one here is from somebody else, K Moon or something, KV Moon, and but it works with Tapo. So a lot of manufacturers all put their devices up that work inside the Tapo environment overall. So it's a kind of a, you know, a certain protocol that they're actually using for those, and then they could be Zigbee related devices or not. Another thing with some of the Tapo stuff through here, and this is something that I've like a Wi-Fi to get a PIR motion one, so passive infrared, you can get one here for 653 New Zealand dollars. So that is, so if you, I've got mine as New Zealand rate through here. You can get a 2-in-1 Zigbee mini PIR motion detector, one of these, and it does lux level and it does motion detection. So it does either or both. And if you go and actually just try and purchase on this particular one, I don't know whose this is, you know, you can buy just a light level sensor, which tell you the lux, and that's actually costing you $20. So these are a bit of a bargain. So I'm actually finding a lot of the Tuya devices are quite good value for money on a lot of the things that I've explored through as to things that they do. You know, some of the curtain things that I've got for the curtain motors and things. Some of them, you know, they're in the range of 174 New Zealand dollars, and some of them I've been able to pick up for around the $50 mark. You know, it's still expensive, but it's worth exploring to see whether there's something that will actually add value to me. So I'm just buying one or two things around the place and then giving them a test and giving them a try. And as I said, each of the devices, I was suddenly thinking, well, actually the Tapo bulbs giving me how strong the signal is with it. So, you know, if I'd have realised that earlier on, I would have actually been measuring. So that's when I could have actually found that my kitchen bulb was actually failing because of the fact that it was just on the extreme of my Wi-Fi. So that's how it kept on cutting out. Now I've got the extender close by to it. I can actually just reconnect it with that one, and hopefully it's going to be a lot stronger, so it's going to be a lot more reliable. So all in all, they've got lots of toys to play with, and they're of reasonable value, so that's why I'm going through them. But I've actually found that they can be complete sods to join into Home Assistant. So you actually have two apps in Tuya. You actually have one called Tuya Cloud or something, and then you have one called Smart Life. Now I'm using the Smart Life, and it's got a whole list of things. You can have sensors, or you can have lights, or you can have things, and then it has got a smaller plants devices, and it's got larger plants devices, industrial air conditioning stuff and things like that. So a lot of those are using the same protocol. And so, you know, it's got so many things that you can choose. And then when you actually choose something like, okay, then it's a PIR sensor, then it says, is it Wi-Fi, is it Zigbee, or is it Bluetooth? You know, so there is a massive lot of items that you can choose. But when you come to try and do it inside of getting the information to come through and downloading that information into into Home Assistants. I don't know how it is in some of the other ones, the other smart things or the Apple one, and I don't know if you can actually connect these ones into the Apple environment, whatever it is. But if we just come into the settings and we go to the devices and services, and we actually add an integration, and we actually just put Tuya there. There's Tuya version 2, and in fact there's the same one. And then there's Tuya Local, and then there's Local Tuya integration. And these two, this is a cloud one, so this is the one that we've got, which actually gets you all of your cloud devices. And then we inside the cloud devices, they're all unsupported. A lot of these are unsupported because there's Zigbee, so they're connected to the Zigbee hub. So therefore, I actually have to connect those via the Local Tuya. So we're just going to cancel out that and go into the Local Tuya integration. So when we try and add a new device, I've got to provide this information at the bare minimum, and also protocol version, I think. So you've got to get that. So where do you get that? So this is something that I'm going to step through, is that I've now paired this PIR sensor with the Tuya device. So at this point in time, it's been paired to my phones through the app, and so therefore it's up in the Tuya cloud. So most of that information is in the Tuya cloud, and you can access it through the developers Tuya cloud, the other website. So there's one which is just a normal Tuya one, and then you've got to go into the developers one to get the information like what the device ID is and what the local key is. Now at this point in time, I just want to step back slightly and say the device ID is the Tuya device ID. So when you actually connect it, it creates an ID and it creates a local key for it and some other data. It's just the way that Tuya manages all of these new devices that are created up there. But that's a Tuya ID. Inside Home Assistant can have a Tuya device, it could have a Tapo device, it could have a Sonoff device, it could have a whatever device from some other product manager, depending on if we just go into integrations, what other integrations we've got through here. So all of these ones through here, Android TV, Remote or Apple or all of these ones, all of these will actually have their own IDs that they'll create for these devices. So Home Assistant also creates a device for creates an ID for these devices as well. So they're known by one name inside the Tuya environment, they're known by another name inside the Home Assistant device. So when you start creating integrations and things like that, you'll find inside the integration it's using the Home Assistant IDs, which are different from the Tuya ones. So just be aware there's all these double, triple, quadruple numbering ups on lots of things, and it sort of ends up suddenly feeling very confusing. Now they do have interfaces so that supposedly you don't actually have to touch this too heavily, but later on you may need to go in and delve, and to a certain extent for setting them up in local Tuya you need to do this. So the next part I want to talk about is the Tuya one is if we go and add an integration through here and we just type Tuya. If this was a brand new setup, I would only see this Tuya here. It would be the only one that I could download. A lot of the other ones, the Tuya local integration, I have to go, you can actually come into here, add an integration, you can come into here, where is it? Somewhere in settings, maybe it's here, no, there's one of the things inside the integrations where you can get, somebody has created their own integration for a thing. So therefore they've suddenly saying, well, yeah, I've got the Tuya devices, but I've got an air conditioning unit or something like that, and it bugs me that I can't access this particular bit of information. So they could write a little bit of something to actually access those things. So the Tuya cloud suddenly said, no, you can only access some of the ones. So Local Tuya is actually a GitHub repository called Local Tuya that's done by this. Get back into it again. Project which was done by this Ross Pogria. And anyway, he's done that, and here's his GitHub repository. Now inside Home Assistant, you can suddenly saying, I want a special repository, and you can pull this in and it'll pull in Home Assistant. So this is a Home Assistant custom integration for handling of Tuya-based devices, and they have certain things. These ones are currently supported. So switches, lights, covers, fans, climates, vacuums. So you can get a Tuya vacuum or a vacuum that is on the Tuya one, and it will work with those. So the main Tuya cloud may not have things. When I actually got the power switch, the Tuya app, the main Tuya app, didn't even recognize it. It said, okay, then I know it's there, but I won't let you integrate it inside of Home Assistant. So these are things that you can do. The covers are actually curtains and things, so a lot of the motors to do with those. Fans and climates, and I think climates are something like aircon triggers and stuff, and fans are for bathroom fans, etc., etc. So therefore they've created an interface that allows you to do this. So this one here, when you go through, when you're adding an integration, first of all, you've got to go and get your credentials from developers.tuya website. You've got to log in, you've got to create that. You can create a free account or there's paid accounts. It could be a little bit of a minefield. And then you've got to figure out where your local server region is. Now, for some unknown reason, for New Zealand, my server region is west coast of USA. So I'll actually put USA in here, and then you actually give your credentials that you have through. So you've got to go through that part of the process. This is the Tuya IoT platform for developers, gives you this information through here, and then you can go through and get the devices. They have one under the cloud where you can go through and it will go, it's sort of like, you can find their API and you can go through and get your devices, and it gives a list of the devices and gives their IDs and passwords and stuff. So it's a bit of a pain. It's got so much on there, it's very hard to navigate. So what I would actually recommend is, if you're going to have Tuya devices, and as I said, it's the cost which you pay, but the more expensive the device, the more seamlessly it's going to integrate with a lot of things, because you're paying more for it. I'm going the cheap way, so this is the consequence of the cheap way. So this particular gentleman here, Mark Watt, goes through the whole thing of setting up a Tuya account and installing things through there. So he's very good at doing that, and he has phenomenal patience in showing how it happens. So that's, you have to set up your developer's account and then go through and do this one through here. So I did all of that, and I was trying to actually manage this through all the way, and then it gets to the point. So this is really the key point. You need, for a new device, to get the name, get the local key, get the host, get the device name, and say which protocol version you are. Then it goes through and scans a whole load of things, and he says, oh, well, not only is this a PIR, but it's also a temperature one, which we'll actually demonstrate through with that. And so you've then got to say what sort of central things it is through there, etc., etc. One of the things that I actually found out, instead of actually having to go up and fight with a developer's account, there's this thing called tinytuya. So this is what we will be using. So when you actually create all of the devices, they go up to the cloud, and tinytuya actually goes through and grabs all of that information. So when I trying to find this inside Home Assistant or on my app or anything like that, it's all hidden away. You can't find this data. You've got to go into this developer's cloud thing, which is so frustrating. So basically, you pip install it into your environment, and then basically, once you've got Tuya, you can actually, once you've got, you can do it by device ID or IP address and the local key through there. What I tend to do is that they've got one, there's a CLI, which is, I think, a keyboard just divided on the command line, or there's somewhere down, there's a couple of Python lists through here, and this is the one you can do Python tinytuya scan, or there's another one which is Python tinytuya wizard. And if you just use those two, they tend to write them to a file called snapshot and another one called wizard, or can't remember, sorry, what is it? What's it called? Tuya-raw. And once I found those, I basically found all the data that I've actually set, all the data that I actually want in those particular ones. So to me, that's sufficient, and I find I don't have to go up. Once I've actually got the credentials from their developers one that I've set up, every time I add a new device up there, I just run these scripts in here inside of VS Code, and off it goes, boom, boom, boom. That means I do have Python installed on my computer, and I do have VS Code installed on my computer with the Python add-ins to make sure that it works on here. So because I've been doing, if you see my playlist, I've got a playlist which is all to do with Python. So I actually do a bit of Python programming, but I find this is the friendliest way to actually do it. So all we're trying to do is inside of is to get these bits of information. The only problem is they're in the cloud and they're not making them accessible to you. And I think the thing is that they're just not making them accessible so that that information is protected. So therefore other people can't come through and hack into your devices. Now, from a security point of view, I don't think I'd be too comfortable with a smart lock on my front door, which might be activated by a fingerprint or something like that. So I wouldn't go there. So if somebody wants to turn my lights on and off, I'm not particularly bothered by that. So that's, I'm not going to have that level of paranoia about these things. And I think the protocol versions, as the devices improve, obviously they're working through on different protocol versions on some of the things they're doing. So that's allowed for the stuff coming through. So based on that, we will go through and do a setup for this. So this will be one part of the video where I talk around these things and do this, so it'll be a part one of the video. The next one is I only want to do this once, which is setting up a sensor. In fact, I've got two sensors, so I could have two crates of it if I do the video wrong, but basically I only want to do it once so that I can set up a device, because it's really just demonstrating that process of doing it. Now again, I'm going through this because I'm purchasing cheap devices, so it's not costing me as much, but I've actually had to suffer going through all these other things. So as I said, you get more expensive devices, they're not going to give you the grief. But to me, this may not be the way I actually want to set my house up in the first place. So I really want to play with some of these things. I'm really impressed with the Home Assistant environment, the way that it does connect all of these different devices from different areas. So it's not locking me in to, you can only purchase Tuya, you can only purchase an Apple device, you can only purchase an Android, a Google Android device or things like that. You can kind of mix and match as you want, and that really appeals to me. And it also allows you to build your own devices. Now, as it is, I'm failing massively on doing these, but I like to know that I've got the freedom to do it. So this ecosystem to me is fantastic. So but it's not smooth. It is quite difficult to do, and I've actually, another thing that I've realized on watching some of the other videos, a lot of people will actually have a production environment, so they got one of the things running all the time, and then they have a development environment, so they got one that they can cock things up on. Me, I've actually just got the one environment, but in fact I've got to try and set up another environment for my daughter's business to see if that can be done there. And so I've got to start exploring maybe having a production environment, but because I've got so many, the devices aren't really, I don't need that level of reliability on what I'm doing at this point in time. It's really just the explore that I'm confident with that, but later on I can clearly see the sense of actually having two environments. And the whole area, you know, like the nice thing is I really mogadored one of these, a system that I actually had here, and I created backups to Google Drive, and it does it automatically. So I actually have a daily backup of mine that goes to Google Drive, and it collects 4, and then it just starts deleting the last one and adding the new one for each day. So I've got 4 backups there, and then I can just pull them in and just restore them. And that's what I did, something where I'd actually was in the same environment on my server, and I just copied the other one across and started deleting from one and deleted it from the other one as well. So I found I was able to recover that quite a lot, because to have actually built that up again from scratch and to bring in all of the add-ins would have been extremely painful. But that's one of the things that when you're actually just exploring these things, you're going to make mistakes and you're going to have these things happen. So really what I'm trying to do is to give you a little bit of an oversight into how I cock things up. So don't do it. And again, one of the things, if I knew that the coverage was, one of the most critical things of actually having a smart home, that would be the one thing that I'd have focused on to say, is my Wi-Fi right? Just coming back to that as well, on the previous one I kind of said, well, you should actually have good Wi-Fi coverage in your house, and you should actually have good Zigbee coverage as well. So how would you know if you've got it? Well, what you can actually do is that you can get something like a little lampstand, and you could put a smart bulb into it with an extension cord, and then you could go and sit it in the furthest corners of your house. If it's two-story house or whatever, go and stick the bulb in the furthest corner from your Wi-Fi and see if it keeps on breaking off. But if the bulb or whatever works there, then you know that you're sort of, and then take it to the next corner, take it to another corner, and take it to anywhere in the house where you think you want to know you're going to have a smart device and maybe communicating with something else. So you need that strong Wi-Fi. So that's a way that you just buy one smart device and you just use an extension cord just to go and stick it in the farthest corners to see whether it works. And you can do the same with the Zigbee by just getting the Zigbee hub wherever it is and actually getting a sensor, and one sensor, and putting it in the far locations, and if it drops off all the time, then you know that you're not quite getting the extent. Then you can map that extent by bringing it in further in, and you can suddenly say, oh yeah, it connects there and it runs there quite happily. Then you can suddenly think, fine, I know that works there, so I need extra coverage through this point, or I need to use that Zigbee hub from here to here, or do something else. So that's a way of very, very cheaply seeing whether you've got the coverage. Now, you can suddenly saying, well, what am I likely to do? If you're likely to do something like curtains, then maybe you're kind of, and you've got windows into a corner of the house or something like that, then maybe you've got blinds or things there, so you will need Wi-Fi coverage or something there, or something to boost the signal so that those things work. So they're, like in a light, for a light bulb in a room, normally it's kind of in the centre of the ceiling so that it's distributing the light evenly. So you don't actually have to get to an edge of a room. So getting your coverage right is something that you can do quite easily and quite cheaply, just to see that you've got what you want. And if you haven't, at least you know you've got a weakness there, and you're suddenly thinking, if I want to go and put something through there, I need to find some way of maybe having a Wi-Fi repeater, or suddenly saying, well, no, I'm actually only going to have Zigbee hub or Zigbee devices in those particular areas, and so I'll just get a little Zigbee hub, sub-hub, that'll actually boost my signal into those locations. So that's a way of exploring. So now I've covered, this one here in the Local Tuya. I tell you what, it was basically banging my head against the wall when I was doing that, and these are the one that I've covered through here. The last thing that I just want to talk about briefly is my dashboard and the way that that's set up. So inside the dashboard, as I said, visually I quite like this. So if all I had none of these things through here. I find this useful just for my power. Now visually I just look at my overall meter just to see that my heating my hot water heating's come on, and I can see that, and then also just seeing like at breakfast and a evening meal, that there's a big power spike through there, and just how big that is, because again they're usually in the range of they're in the peak cost period for my thing. So these are the four things that I want, and if I have those four, basically they cover everything I want. These are just giving me a little bit more granularity. Like the blinds, I can actually control from this thing here. If I just hold my finger down on it, it comes up. I can set it to open halfway, or open fully, or close fully, and then I can actually say it was open 6% now. Now I can actually say close. So it's going to go into the, oh no, it's saying that it's closed or something. So I can actually say now open. So it'll go and activate whatever the previous process one was, or it don't just stop it and then open it up again. It's actually saying that at the moment, oh no, it's still there. So let's just put it to there, and let's just see. 6 seconds ago, so it's just reading that it's 60%. So let's just see that as it is. So again, with my little PIR thing here, I'm going to bring the little box out and go magic box, and it's detective, and my light's gone on, hooray! And then after 30 seconds it will come off again. So what's actually happening on this dashboard here? Now, as I said, in the dashboard, what you can actually do is you can have all of these sorts of cars that you can have. You can actually have a solar sun elevation, or a sort of a gauge as to how much power you're using or something. So there's a gauge. Where's the gauge? Is that the gauge? I can never flip it around. You get entities through here, and you've got smart plugs, which is just an image that you just turn on or turn off or something like that. Now, when you get this, you can actually have the plugs, and you can have a switch. So you can just suddenly say, oh, I hit that switch, that's going to turn it on. And it will then go and find the associated entity that goes with that. So smart plug thing, have we found it? But the other thing that you can do is that you can do it in the editor in YAML. So it tells you how the YAML, how you just describe that item to what you do. So the one that I use all the time, going back into my, where was that? So that's into Max 1, and just going into here for the edit, I find, again, I find these things here. And what these things here, if we just add a card, this is the picture. So I've just got a floor plan that you can actually just do, and on here it's got I can't remember what this thing's called, I'll find it in a minute, but these are the ones that I can do, so I can add a lot of items onto it. So to me, I just got 4 things that actually give me all the information. I've got a graph on my power coming in, and then the sensors, my other ones through here. So if we just edit this one here, this is called a badge. So you've got a state badge, and you find your particular sensor or button or what you've got. Like in here, this one here is called the light kitchen, and basically you locate where these go. And I'm using an icon, a state icon, so it's because it's a light, it's showing me a light bulb. If it's a switch, that's showing a button switch of a kind of up or down, on or off. But I've also got a plug, and if I've got a plug somewhere down here, plug, and the plugs are actually shown into that distinction through there. And then all they actually have is a top and a left and right. So the top starts from there, so that's 0, and then that's 100%. So 100% from the top is the bottom, and then from the left, that's 0, and that's 100%. So you can move any of these objects anywhere on your from 0 to 100 in the y direction in the negative, and from x from 0 across to 100 in that. And so you can locate all of those icons on there. So that's how I actually do those ones on there. And for these ones, I do the same thing. So if I'm doing this one here, this one's I want one with a reasonably simple thing. So this one here, we'll just use that sensor. So we'll actually just go, it's a sensor, and then we can go power. And when we go power, I can actually put power, that one on there, or I can actually have power, we come through and go sensor power, whoops, Z, power. As I type it, it comes through, and that's the one that I've actually chosen. So that's a sensor, and it's showing me that information, and it's displaying it there. So I've got it located so from the top 7% down, and from the left 12% across. And also, and if I now save that, that's got all of those items through there. Now if I click on that, it'll actually load up my graph through there. And if I do show more, it brings it into this history thing where I can add, or I can look at different time frames. Like this is looking over a 2-day period. I can say the whole of this week, and it will then show me from the 29th through to the 5th of May. So it's giving me that week's worth. So you can look and get more information on these things as it is. It's pulling in from the database. Who cares? There it is. It's come through. So you can look at it at different levels of information. It's slowing down here a bit. So that's how you can edit the dashboard and when you add devices you can choose which dashboard you add them to. And a lot of the times if I'm just adding a simple sensor like that one there, that's the motion one, I will actually add that when I create a new one, and then I will actually just go into the code editor and I will get its ID, so I don't need to search around and find out what it is. I just add something to the dashboard and then I go in and edit its sensor, and I suddenly think, well, I've got that now up on my main on my plan, so I can actually take it out of there, and then just so the motion sensor for the battery, I don't need that ID anymore, so I just delete that one through there. So I'm really pleased. Oh no, my rainfall was working, and then it's just it went unavailable. So that's been running for about a day. Well, wait a minute, what are we today? We're the 4th. So it's been running for about a day and a bit, 18th, so 6 o'clock through to about, it faded there. So that's how much I'm getting off a battery at the moment. So that's a good indication. So that's one of these little chips, one of the tiny ones like that, that's actually reading my bucket meter. So that's lasting over a day on a battery. So what I can now do is seeing if I can drop some information or something like I don't know what I can do, because the rain meter's a switch. It's a little reed switch, and every time a magnet passes it, it closes and causes a little minor current. So this is just reading what's incoming. So if it's raining, it's got to be alive all the time. So I've got to think of another way to actually see if I can conserve some energy on it so that it's not using as much energy. So as it is, I know now that if I replace the battery daily, it'll most probably it'll run for the moment. So I'm using at the moment an 18650 battery for doing that. But this is good. This I can actually get some information on it and see what it is. So I can go in and edit that sort of thing. So that's how I'm editing those, is that basically I'm getting the ID of the sensor that's getting the stuff, and then I'm just putting it onto a plan, and I'm doing the same for the battery and the same for this. This is getting a bit busier now. I'm getting the temperature and the moisture content and the temperature, the humidity generally. I could just leave those on there for the PIR activities, and for my other power sensor, maybe I should be pulling those onto another one, so maybe I should make another plan for those. So that's how my setup is, and I find that's a hell of a lot. You can read it a lot better and a lot more quickly than a lot of the other ones that I've seen displayed through there. So as it is, as an architect designer, I can draw plans, but you can actually just hand draw plans or have them in there because it's good, because you end up with everything that you've got all on a couple of plans, and you've got all your information there. And again, it allows you the drill down. If I like for the bulb, if I want to hold that bulb down, I can change its color and do the things there. I don't need to go to a special switch through here. If I want to find out the history of that particular temperature for that one there, if I click on that, it does that, and then I can show more, and then I can actually do it for this month, or last month, or whatever. I can get a lot more information that I want. Then I can also actually add other ones to compare them against in different areas. So these, from the dashboard, these are the only ones that I want. These other ones are to do with these particular chips that I'm trying to do as the bespoke ones, wherever they've gone. I've lost my chip. Oh, that one, these sorts of things. And so the fact most of the time they're offline, but at least I'm trying to keep them going and see what I do. And if they become reliable, I'd most probably incorporate them into one of these dashboards, like the rainfall in hours and stuff like that. So that's where I want to pause this video at this point in time, and then the next one I will be going through and using and going through and basically pulling the data down from things and adding it to Tuya Local. And that's the second thing. And because I don't like editing a lot of the videos, I find it too time consuming. I prefer to do it in a one run. So that's where we're going to stand at this point in time. So we've covered a few things here. We've covered one to a certain extent why I'm actually using the Tuya things. You know, we've covered the different entities and how we can actually find those out through the developers tools. We've talked about the home assistance environment where we're actually connecting these things to, and as I said, that the end part of this here is once I actually integrate this into it, is the idea is that I can use this to trigger, so the sensor will trigger certain other events on as it is. I think most of the ones that I'm actually triggering are Tuya devices, but I can actually I can trigger, what I'll most probably do is I'll set this thing up so that I trigger a Tapo bulb. So I can do that in Home Assistant, but I can't do that in my Tuya app, and I can't do that in my Tapo app. So this is where this whole ecosystem allows you to actually cross-manage these things. You know, and if I want to do that in the Tuya app, most probably what I'd actually have to do is go and replace this Tapo bulb with a Tuya bulb so that they're on the same manufacturer's things, and maybe I can get them to actually trigger. So dashboards, visuals, I think the visuals, there's no real mystery to this, and it's really just a bit of patience of setting things up and doing them. And as I say, I find this interface absolutely wonderful. I do maybe need to clean the images up a bit because they're a bit messy, but apart from that, I can't recollect, I've done this video a couple of times now, is in the media, down on the list through here, you can add your media. So this is where I've got a few plans that I've uploaded. So you go manage, add media, and then you go on to your thing. So I'm on a different computer to where my server's actually running Home Assistant, but this will download it onto Home Assistant and put it in a subdirectory such that it can actually access these images. So that's the one that I've got. I tried another one which was vertical, and it didn't really work out very well on the dashboard. And also the sizing on the dashboard, you know, it's only quite small. I don't know if I can actually extend this or make them larger on this. It works for me at this point in time, and it has all the information, so it's good enough for me at this point. But as I said, I would edit these. I'd come in and I'd edit them. I'd do the initial bit and just bring the image in and just do a picture card, and then I'd start adding ones. I'd get one, and then I'd go and have a look up on the developer documentation, or the documentation on Home Assistant, and see what other things I can actually do. I think when I had it initially, there was a whole load of just state badges, and the bulbs were on and off, and then I ended up, well, I can actually do an icon. And then when I found out about icons, then I can actually go through and do a lot of playing with them. So maybe this one here, I can break it so that it's maybe 1 across and 17 down. And at the moment, it's got 3 across, and I don't know how. It just adds to the bottom all the time. And that's all I want to do. And I think that you can also have here, this is, I've just got everything on one tab, but you can have several tabs. So I've got my main one here. I could have 2 or 3 different tabs. So one could be giving me information on the server, how much room I've got, how much CPU is using, how much things I'm using, how powerful my Wi-Fi is, etc., etc., etc. But not really interested at this point in time. For a more commercial one, for my daughter's business, maybe I need to go into that in a little bit more depth. At the moment, it's really, my next interest is trying to get some automation sort of running and having the information and keeping what I've got just reliable enough that it's not actually failing. So I hope you found that of interest. If you did, please give a thumbs up. I will go through the process of setting up a Tuya device so that I can actually bring it into here, and once I've brought it into here, I will then use it and create an automation that will then trigger something similar to this one here. So if I just take my little box and open it up and go, yeah, so we have it detected, the light's gone on, and then if we wait 30 seconds, it'll go off again, you see. So That's an awful lot of hard work just to open a box and get the sensor working, but that's the way it is. Okay then, thank you very much for watching.